Welcome to the final lecture on genetics and cellular function. And this is chromosomes and hereditary. So this is just a quick look of what does it mean to have your genes and what do they start to make. So heredity, it's transmission of genetic characteristics from parent to offspring. When you have a karyotype, it's the chart of 46 chromosomes laid out in order by size and other physical features. This means nothing to you right now. But when I show you this picture, this is what it means by karyotype. In 46 chromosomes, it kind of makes sense because 46 is going to be all of your little strands of DNA laid out one by one. Now, one thing that I mentioned in the last lecture is what does it mean by 23 pairs? So 23 pairs, if you have a pair of shoes, you have 2 shoes. So you have 23 pairs of chromosomes, it means you have 46 chromosomes. And you have 2 members from each parent. They're called homologous chromosomes, so 1 pair from the mom, 1 pair from the dad. Now, 22 of those pairs are called autosomes. They look alike and carry the same genes. 1 pair looks different, and those are going to be the sex chromosomes. And these are different because one's an X and one's a Y. Normal female is homologous pair, so they have an X and an X. A normal male has an X and a very much smaller Y chromosome. Let's take a look at it. So this is the karyotype. You have 46 pairs of DNA. You have 1, 2, 3, you can see the numbers yourself. And these are 22 autosomes because they look identical. Now you can see this one down here, this one's large, that one's small, that's an X, and that's the Y. So that's why that's the sex link, and these are all autosomes, but there are 23 pairs of them to give you a total of 46. Or, sorry, 46. So now you have other stuff with numbers or stuff to memorize. Diploid. Diploid is a cell with 23 pairs of chromosomes. 23 pairs means you have 46 chromosomes total. So haploid contains half as many chromosomes as somatic. Sperm and egg cells. So what's half? You don't have 23 pairs, you have 23 chromosomes in haploid cells. So reading comprehension on this test is the largest challenge for most students. Because if you see 23 pairs of chromosomes, that means you have 46 chromosomes. If you have 23 chromosomes, it means you have half of the information. It's a haploid. And the term fertilization restores the diploid number or restores the complete amount of chromosomes that you need to have. I know that's confusing. So take some time and just kind of make sure every time you look at chromosomes, you're reading it very, very, very carefully. You have other terms. What's a locus? And a locus is the location of a particular gene on the chromosome. So you saw those big X's with the karyotypes. There's one specific spot on those X's for one particular gene. You have about 20,000 genes that you saw on those karyotypes. So it has a lot of information in there, but one locus is going to code for one particular gene. An allele is a different form of a gene at the same locus. And that doesn't make sense, because if you have different forms of a gene in the same locus on 2 homologous chromosomes, that just means that you have multiple copies. So a locus is the location, and alleles can be different forms of genes. And remember, a gene is just X's or A's and T's and C's and G's, but when you build it all up, you can have different genes on the same locus. And that's what the term allele is. You can have a dominant allele, which is going to be represented by a capital letter, or recessive. This is the pea plant that you probably memorized in elementary school, where green and yellow, where you have the Y is going to be, the little y is recessive, the big Y is going to be dominant, and this is, you have two different forms of a gene on the same location. So the yellow, this P will be yellow because it's dominant. But if it gets two recessive traits, it's going to be green. So dominant, capital, recessive, lowercase. Let's look at the cleft chin. So here you have a big C, a little c. So this is going to code for the cleft chin. So this is big C, little c. And if you see it's dominant and recessive, this will be showing a cleft chin, cleft chin, cleft chin. And this will be recessive, recessive, no cleft chin. And that's how the locus can have two different forms of a gene at one location. You also have genotype and phenotype. Genotype is an allele that an individual possesses for a particular trait. So a genotype is what's in your genetic code. If it's homologous, then it has two identical alleles. Heterozygous means it has two different alleles. If you have parents that have blue eyes and brown eyes, you're heterozygous because you have blue and you also have brown. One's dominant, one's recessive. Homozygous means if you have two parents that have blue eyes and you have blue eyes, then you have the two identical alleles for the same trait or eye color. And when I was talking about eye color, phenotype is what you look like. So in my case, my dad had blue eyes, my mom had brown eyes. I have brown eyes. So my observable trait is I have a dominant brown with a recessive blue in my genetic code. But genotype is what you have from both parents. Phenotype is what's shown that people can look at. And if you go to genes and you look at alleles, they have genetic counselors that can perform many different types of genetic testing. There's 23andMe. There's all of these different things that can kind of look at what's in your genetic code. Do you have the possibility of transmitting genetic diseases onto offspring? Do you have issues with your genetic code that later on it can cause mutations? So all of these things that genetic counselors and all of these online things are looking at is what is built up in your genetic code. And you learn this in definitely high school, maybe middle school, the Punnett square, and that's where we looked at the cleft chin and we looked at what are the two different things on your parents, your either mom's genetic code, because remember it's a locus that has two different types of alleles. You can get one from your mom, one from your dad, and this kind of shows you what you can pass on to your children or what you have the possibility of having within your body itself. And when you look at it, this is just looking at one different thing. So this is looking at cleft chin, eye color. We looked at the P plant. So this is one specific trait, and there are thousands of different traits you're passed on from parents. So it becomes very difficult, and even some genetic counselors, it's difficult for them to look at all of the different things that's in your genetic code. And that whole genetic code is called your gene pool. So it's the collective genetic makeup of a population as a whole. So if you are going to have children, you're going to look at the gene pool. That's not what happens, but you look at what are the observable traits for you. And the gene pool is everything that offspring could have. And if you have multiple alleles, more than 2 allelic forms for a trait, 100 alleles are responsible for cystic fibrosis. 3 alleles are responsible for ABO blood types, and those are the 3 alleles. So like I said, this isn't in red, you don't have to memorize it, but it is very, very, very complicated to look at everything that's possible, everything that could be a possibility, and all the different outcomes that could happen in an offspring. And also you have cancer. This is an illness that disrupts normal rates of cell division. It permanently changes the DNA sequence through a mutation. It can be in the skin for skin cancer. It can be in the lung for lung cancer. Wherever it's going to happen, that's what it's going to be called, brain. And the brain isn't really in the neurons, it's in more of the linings of the brain. But all these different things, once cell division happens without any types of control over it, it pretty much will become cancer. And oncology is the medical specialty that looks at it. Both benign and malignant will look at that. In tumor angiogenesis, this is the specific look at how blood vessels grow differently in a tumor than it does in healthy tissue. So what's benign? Benign usually grows slow. It's contained in a capsule. And what that means is that it's contained in a capsule. If it's contained in a fibrous capsule, it won't metastasize. If it doesn't metastasize, it doesn't leave its capsule. It's very easy to treat. Malignant, on the other hand, it doesn't have that capsule. It grows fast, and it can give off cells that can travel through the bloodstream and then start to form in another part of the body. And once a malignant tumor metastasizes, goes someplace else, it becomes very difficult to treat. And once you're treating one spot, another spot can pop up, and that's how a lot of people die from cancer, is through malignant tumors that grow someplace else from their original site. And what causes cancer? There's not a lot of things on here, and I didn't include them because everything pretty much can cause cancer. And those are all called carcinogens. Radiation, you probably know, being out in the light and the sunlight is bad for you. Chemicals, a cigarette, food preservatives, industrial chemicals, even household chemicals can cause cancer. Certain types of viruses like the human papillomavirus, the HPV, the hepatitis C, and type 2 herpes simplex can cause cancers. But there's so many different things that, if you think about it, anything in large excesses can cause cancer. And only 5 to 10% of cancers are from hereditary, so from your genes, from your parents. Most of them are going to be caused from carcinogens in your different environments. And if it's a carcinogen, it triggers a gene mutation. That gene mutation could cause cancer or might not. And that concludes Chapter 4.